Hello, everyone. Welcome to Grounds for Sculpture, Artists in Action with Megan Uhaze, hosted by Anya Mickey. My name is Julio Bedell. I'm the manager of experiential programs here in the education department. And I'd like to welcome you to our very first modified Artists in Action. This program arose because the last 2 years we were not able to have our Open Studios Artists in Action. We're here in the MEB building at Grounds for Sculpture. And we decided we still want to share the artist stories and expand our artist network. So we created this online platform to still continue to share those stories with you. So this is our first one, and it's with Megan Uhaze, and we are going to offer 9 more throughout now until into next year, which you'll be looking for the artist list in the near future. I'd like to thank the Seward Johnson Atelier and Lynn DiClemente and Claire Brown for their collaboration with the MEB artists in this production. I would also introduce Anya Mickey. We met last year. She curated the Members Musings exhibition, our members exhibition, which also went online, which was very successful. We had an artist talk also online. And it's been wonderful to work with her. She's a local independent curator and artist as well. And she's going to be your host for this conversation with Megan. Okay. I'd ask you all to keep your laptops muted. And I'm going to go over, we're all nestled here very cozily in Megan's studio. There's 4 of us here. I'm going to go man the laptop and take field the questions in the chat. Anya, want to take that?
Sure, yeah. So hi, everybody. We're just switching spots here. As Julio just mentioned, we are in a true production set at the moment. Thank you so much for joining us today. As Julio mentioned before, this is the first Artists in Action program. And my name is Anya Mickey. I will be curating this series, and I'm so excited to be here today with Miss Megan Uhaze. So we got a lot of stuff to get into, but first, just to give you guys an idea of how this is going to run, myself and Megan are going to have a conversation. I'm going to read through her bio, and we're going to get into a whole bunch of interesting topics, from process to activism in artwork and finishing, which Miss Megan knows a lot about. We have an expert here. And at the end, we're going to take some questions. We're only able to do written questions today. So throughout the program, if anything pops up that you'd like us to elaborate on, or something that we didn't elaborate on that we missed, feel free to write that into the chat box. And Julio will be reading those out to us live, and we will go from there. So I want to kick everything off with reading a little bit about Megan from her bio. So Megan Uhaze is a New Jersey-based artist, born and raised in the Trenton area. She has her BFA from Moore College of Art and Design in Philadelphia, majoring in art history, as well as two-dimensional fine art painting. She currently works as a full-time professional artist and painter at the Seward Johnson Atelier in Hamilton, New Jersey. She is primarily a painter and printmaker. Her work most recently has been focused on endangered species and the environmental issues leading to habitat loss. So that's a little bit about Megan. I'm going to just give you a little bit of feedback from having the ability to sit down and talk to you, being able to research your work. I was really, really struck by this multifaceted approach that your art has, and it's something that's really special to who you are as an artist. Your work is not only extremely proficient when it comes to technicality, right? When we talk about demonstrating the ability to execute a certain medium. So you have really strong technical understanding. Your work is extremely defined and organic and has this really, really original aesthetic. As you guys can see behind me, we have some of her work over and through here. It's something that if you see it in a room, you'll be able to pick it out immediately and say, I think Megan probably made that. And that's really, really unique as well. But not just that, you also have a really sharp focus on material use, and you have a lot of purpose in the materials that you use. And you also use a completely different school of thought to inform your work with the purpose educating your individuals who see your pieces. So there's educational components. We have this really original style. We have strong technical skill, and these are the things that make up a good creator. You know, if you have this rare blend of I check all of these boxes from a curatorial perspective, that's really how most people judge art, and you do a beautiful job of checking all those boxes. Absolutely, yeah. And it was really wonderful for me to have the opportunity to, in researching you and in reviewing your works, it was something that really stuck out, and I'm excited to get into this conversation.
Great, thanks.
Yeah. So the first question that I have, can you just give us a little bit of an explanation about what you do here at Grounds for Sculpture? Not everybody knows what an atelier is. Let's get a little background on that.
Sure. So I've been working for the Seward Johnson Atelier for, has to be at least the last 12, maybe going on 13 years. I'm not quite sure. As a painter, in the department that I'm in, I focus on professional finishing for fine art projects, as well as preservation and conservation and patina. So we also do a lot of traditional patina techniques, and I've been lucky enough to be learning that from my incredible boss, Autumn Wright, who's the head of the paint department, who you'll also meet probably during this Artists in Action series.
Yep.
So it's just like a day in and day out job of getting to work with a bunch of really cool artists, getting to work on Seward Johnson's work, and getting to paint and kind of help artists see their vision. If there's something that maybe they don't think they can fully accomplish, on their own, or they really need a professional studio to help them kind of make this vision come to life, that's what we're there for. So, yeah, it's a lot of fun.
Wow. Okay. I want to dive into your personal art practice. Something that really jumped out from our first conversation was your process and how involved your process is. Can you walk us through what your process is and explain a little bit of why it is like that and how you got there?
Sure. So I think in processes and the style kind of maybe that I'm going for.
Yeah, how it is that you get to the end result.
Sure. So everything starts off with just me thinking more like an idea. As I said, I've been focusing on endangered species a lot and animals. So I'm kind of doing research and picking things that are interesting to me based on their look, their style. And then I really start with some concept drawings. And as you can see, I like to draw a lot on transfers. I use a lot of transparencies where I do all of my drawings. And then that allows me to kind of layer them on top of one another. I can figure out my compositions that way. Something that I really enjoy is a mirrored image. It's something that's just always appealed to me. There's always two sides to a story. There's always two sides to something. So this also helps me get that exact replication that I'm looking for by being able to use these images and layer. So a lot of my drawings start in my sketchbook, or they just start on tracing paper. I keep a pretty thorough amount of drawings here that I just hold on to everything I draw. And I work my compositions out that way. And then from kind of laying out the image that I'm thinking about, then I start to build actually a background first. I'll kind of work on the background of the piece, maybe spray in different elements, and then start stenciling and using different sharp edges and shapes and imagery. And then I kind of get into painting the actual subject matter on top kind of by hand.
Wow.
So, yeah. And that's kind of the start to finish way of jumping into a painting.
Yeah.
And I let the animal inform me. I let the animal's habitat inform me. I let anything I kind of see along the way kind of help pick the colors, pick the style, pick the shapes. And I kind of just build and expand as I go. I wouldn't say that there's a fully set image in mind.
Okay.
There's an idea of what I want this to be and what I want to portray. But as the colors go on and, that might look good with that, or as things expand, it kind of evolves and becomes its own thing until we reach the end.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Fascinating. You mentioned, that research aspect. what resources do you use for getting your inspiration, for learning more about your subjects?
I use a lot of different things. I mean, I have to say I primarily use the internet. People will ask me questions all the time, and I'll say, that's what Google's for. I will go on and just kind of start going down a rabbit hole of looking at different images of the animal. I'll go on encyclopedia pages and read about the animal, look for articles that are coming up on different websites about maybe challenges that are facing that species right now. I also keep on hand at home a really large collection of like encyclopedia books. I really like large books with big, beautiful pictures in them of different species and things like that. And I'll draw from that. I definitely use reference imagery. Pulling the concept and the style and the background ideas from my head. But when I want to actually paint the subject matter, I really do like to have a lot of reference imagery to paint from. I think we talked about this, that I don't ever feel like I'm trying to perfectly represent something. Like I'm not trying to draw the most realistic image of, an elephant you've ever seen, or the most realistic image of this you've ever seen. I'm kind of just capture it in my way and show it realistically, but in my style, in a way that like when I feel I'm done, I'm done. Like that feels like that to me. And then I move on to something else.
Yeah. Fantastic. I love this note of like hard copy encyclopedias are still around today, and somebody is using them for something.
A coworker once said that they had a subscription to Bird and Wildlife magazine and would I want their old magazines. And I was like, yes.
Absolutely.
So I like definitely pull from different things people give me. People have even given me old like 12-month calendars that you pin to the wall. But if they have really great images of animals, like it's good reference imagery, and I'll use it if I can. I mean, it's endangered species I like to focus on. So, but I just like to pull from whatever I can.
I love it.
Yeah.
I love it. I'll have to keep that in mind if I ever find any like great lemur pictures that are laying around.
Please. Old calendars, old magazines, I'll take them.
Yeah, awesome. There is this, I mentioned this kind of in my intro, but you've got this really distinct style to your pieces. They are very crisp, they are clean, they're vibrant. What was the journey like to this style? Because, as I mentioned in your bio, just as a refresher for everybody at home, you did go to art school. Was this something that you started picking up in art school, or was this something that you've always been really interested in as far as like that crispness and the cleanness? Can you talk a little bit about that?
So when I was in art school, I feel like I was on a different path at the start. A lot of my work was almost collaged into a bit, like painting and still creating an environment, but collaging in elements like subject matter. And it definitely tended to be in school a little bit more figurative. I would do things dealing with family a lot. And then I decided to take an elective in printmaking. And I went into printmaking, took a lot of printmaking courses, and realized that I really like the graphic, blocked out quality I was getting from doing some silk screening and doing some linoleum prints. And I was like, I really like this. And it was a professor that said to me, I know you're a fine art and art history major, but I really feel like you're secretly an illustrator. Don't you think maybe you want to be an illustrator? And I was like, no, I don't want to be an illustrator. I have nothing against it. I love illustration. I think my work is a little bit on the side of illustration, maybe my style. But I was like, no, I just still want to do my own thing and do this. But I understand that, and I took that to heart. That I can be very graphic, and it can still be something. And I think I still wanted to paint. I think the technical process of painting for me is important. I actually just love the process of mixing the color and putting the brush to the surface and making the marks and painting. But I think I pulled from that, really enjoying the crispness and the sharpness of the printmaking and what I was getting with my silkscreen prints. Yeah. And then bringing those bright colors and those shapes and those styles into my painting. And I really feel like maybe by the end of art school, I was kind of headed somewhere. And This painting here, actually, this really big blue one is very old. It's something I've had since college. And that was kind of where I started to head after I was talking more about print. And you can see that it almost could look like a silkscreen print in a way, but it was something that I was kind of moving in that direction. But then I started kind of wanting the subject matter to maybe be a little bit more realistic on top of a very like solid graphic background. And that's where maybe like painting the elements came in instead of doing anything that was very flat like that, like a silkscreen print. And I think that's kind of what brought me to where I am now. And I still feel like I'm hoping that I'm always changing and trying new things. And then obviously getting my job at the atelier and being exposed to a lot of products that I'd never even thought of using or ever had heard of before. I mean, you know that they exist, but you're like, that's not what a fine art painter uses.
Yeah.
But then it was like, wow, like just getting to touch these things and use them on a daily basis, it was like, I bet this could translate really well over into my own art as well. And I started trying to like, you know, buy little jars of things here and there and start experimenting, like I was saying, with maybe just using pigment and not really turning things into full paint. But starting to use some of these industrial products that are giving me a very crisp, clean, bright color and let me experiment and work into things. It kind of pushed me in that direction.
Yeah. Are you, in reviewing your portfolio and really looking through your work, I was really taken aback by the printmaking that you have done. Is that something that you're still currently practicing, or are you interested in going back to that at any point in time? Or
it's definitely something I'd like to go back to. For me, it was like focusing on painting. And now that I've been really focusing on painting for a bunch of years, it's like, oh, I really like printmaking. Maybe I'll do printmaking again. It was also, you know, when you have a facility on hand that's easy to use, it's much more convenient.
Yeah.
But that would definitely be something where, you know, I'd have to take advantage of local, you know, print studios to go in and use press beds and things like that. I've still kept everything. I really would love to set up some silkscreen work back at my house again and maybe start doing some posters and t-shirts like I used to do and things like that. But it's definitely something I continue on. I think in the last couple years I've done definitely some woodblock prints and a couple linoleum prints, but I haven't delved into it like I used to. But it's definitely something I'd like to tackle again in the future.
cool. Yeah. Okay. So we'll have to keep an eye out for that. Everybody at home. How do you? So we talked about the encyclopedias. We talked about the calendars. You know, like how you're obtaining some of this raw material to be inspired by and to work from. How do you go about narrowing down your subjects?
I really, when I started doing the body of work that I'm doing now, focusing on endangered species, it was more like I really do want to pull from this topic. Like, I wanted to get myself like a lot more into painting. I was going through a little bit of a lull, and I was like, I'm gonna, this is a subject matter I enjoy. I really enjoy painting animals. Mm-hmm. I think that just the variety that you find in nature and animals, the colors, the patterns, the styles, the shapes, the sizes, it really speaks to me in the way that I love color and pattern and shapes and styles. So it seemed like a good fit. And then I figured if I'm going to do this, I want to represent species that need representation. I want to really focus on endangered species and mostly critically endangered species. And that's kind of where that started to come from. Mm-hmm. And then, and then I started thinking if I'm gonna be doing this and I'm gonna be representing this subject matter, then I also want to be pulling from different things I'm learning while I'm learning about this animal. And then a lot of my paintings start to become, the color choices and the pattern choices are getting very influenced by that. Yeah.
Can you elaborate on that idea a little bit more?
Sure. So for instance, when I did there's a painting here of a mountain bongo. Deciding what to do with that, like I found this image of a bongo and I was like, I'm painting it. I love it. I'm gonna paint it. But then it was like, what do I want to do for the design and what do I want things to be in the background? And I started reading up about the animal, and there's many varieties of bongo, and I was kind of drawn to the mountain bongo. And then I decided to do, bring this mountain into the scene. And then I wanted to have plant life and like all these floral elements. So I thought I'm going to really look into what plants grow in that region that they're from. And I'm going to pull my imagery from that.
Yeah.
And then in a lot of my other paintings, I'm pulling a lot of the colors I'm choosing and patterns I'm choosing. I'm pulling from maybe the habitat or other things in the culture where that species can be found. I don't know if we can see it, but I have a cassowary painting above my head, and I pulled a lot of the colors from some of the textiles I was seeing in the area and the plants in the area.
Yeah.
And then the image in the center is actually an image that's found on the flag of Papua New Guinea.
Oh, I love that.
Of a bird of paradise. So I wanted to represent the fact that, this species is under threat in, Papua New Guinea. And that's kind of prevalent in a lot of my different paintings. One of the newest paintings that I completed before having my son, so I haven't been painting as much as I'd like to recently, but I have a little baby at home now, so was this orangutan painting that I wanted to do on a larger panel. And I just knew I wanted to paint an orangutan. I mean, I think we were talking about the fact that I've painted a bunch of different species, but there's actually some that are the most well-known critically endangered species, and I haven't tackled it yet because I feel like I want it to be on a bigger scale. I want it to be on a bigger platform. I feel like I can't even imagine a world where there isn't these species that are so, distinct.
Yeah.
So I wanted to go larger scale with the orangutan, and in reading up about the orangutan and looking into what's causing its habitat destruction, it was the main thing that kept coming up was the palm oil industry.
Yes.
So this painting is primarily talking about that. It's talking about the fact that the orangutan is losing its habitat through the palm oil industry and through the destruction of the forest it lives in to build palm oil plantations.
Yeah.
So the plants you see in the painting are actually palm oil seeds, and they're kind of floating around and kind of consuming the piece. And then the orangutan's in the center. The species of butterfly that I wanted to have in to almost like soften it is a species of butterfly from the same region that this orangutan lives. And then in the bottom having, the youth, a young orangutan starting its life. And then the concept of there being people, just feeling like, I don't know, sad, overwhelmed, like why is this happening? Or just like, the connection, actually you were saying the connection that between the fact that it's where we come from and there's something there,
Yeah.
So, but that was a painting that I really enjoyed, and I'd like to do more panels larger like this in the future, dedicated to maybe some of the more, I call them the big guns in the animal world, but like, endangered elephant species, rhino species, tiger species.
Yeah.
Just things that I can't even imagine, like if we lived in a world and there weren't any.
Yeah, and people had never, children growing up were just not familiar with the existence of that creature.
Yes.
Absolutely. I love, when talking about your work, that statement of working with an endangered species, it's not just that you focus on land animals or even, like large mammals. You're focusing on foliage, you're focusing on plant life, you're focusing on insects as well. And I think that the farther, if we examine this more, really looking into the issues that are facing and causing these extinctions within these populations, we were talking about this actually before we started rolling, how I forgot that palm oil was an issue because I feel like it's kind of fallen out of the conversation of mainstream media, after it was something that was being talked about quite a good deal, and how art is supposed to do that. It's supposed to make us see something that we are too busy in our own lives to be cognizant of, and we're supposed to go, oh, I remember when that was a problem. What's happening about that? And then we are prompted to go research and to go act and to try to enact some form of change, and that's a reminder, and that's what your job is. And I think you've done it very successfully. I also just want to mention that something about your work that I really, really, respect is that especially in Western culture, we have this idea of where we love the cuddly white seals and we love the baby giraffes and how we want to protect those things. But we forget that there are populations of people who live around those, and our conservation efforts affect and should involve those individuals, because when we talk about conservation, we also have to talk about the cultures and the original populations who are around those areas, and the deeper conversation that should be had within that overall issue. But it's not just a problem of animals. You know, there are also populations of humans, and I love the fact that your work is centered around the need of protection for these things that are vital to our ecosystems, but it's also still interweaving and honoring the original groups that these creatures exist around. You know, with your interweaving between the textiles and the art forms too. I know you mentioned that you have some work behind us that is honoring some of the local art from where an animal originates from.
Yeah, the Numbit painting here. Numbits are found in Australia, and I decided to do I was reading up about them and just looking at some different things, and I decided to pull, again, some of the colors, but also the style of painting. So it's all dots. It's dots in different formations and different strengths and weaknesses in color, and that's something you see in a lot of Aboriginal art in Australia. It's a style that they use, and I wanted to put that into that painting as well. But yeah, I really like the things that I learned through looking this animal up and researching to somehow influence where I go with the painting.
Yeah.
Because then I think it fits. I think if I just created some random thing that I wanted to do and then I just stuck an animal on top, there might be a little bit of a weird juxtaposition. But I feel in some way, in having the colors I'm choosing, the patterns I'm choosing, the styles I'm choosing, relate a bit to what the subject matter is, it just makes it feel at home in that environment. Because I know that sometimes when I talk about my paintings, I say that I almost feel like when I'm painting them, I'm creating a safe space for that animal to live. Like I'm creating a little spot for them to exist, since we're taking away a lot of their spots to exist. And I don't know, it's almost like therapy for me to just kind of get into it and learn about it and feel like I'm putting the time and effort in to try to learn a little more and make myself a little bit more aware of things as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Which is so important when you're creating art from an educational perspective. And that's a very big part of the dialogue in the arts world right now, you know, doing your research and appropriately honoring things the way that they need to be. As a woman and as a new parent as well, which congratulations.
Thank you.
I don't think a lot of people would expect you to be working around like industrial solvents and finishes, and choosing to put those into your work. Can you talk a little bit about the importance of those materials and why you work with them?
Yes. So it is definitely pretty toxic and smells pretty bad. But like I said, I kind of just fell in love with it through my job. It was something I just got thrown into. I got hired as a painter and I was like, oh, great, I'm going to come paint. And then it was like, here, toss on this hazmat suit, grab this automotive spray gun, and here we go. And I was like, whoa, you know, so I've learned a ton through my job, and I just fell in love with these products, these like automotive paints and solvent paints and enamel paints and things that are more on the chemical side. They're really like paints created in a lab, you know, like these intense compounds. And I just love it. And I think for me, it was a choice of I'm really enjoying working with it. And secondly, it actually allows me to do things that I really want to do. I was previously working mostly in acrylic and oil, which I still do work in acrylic a bit, and then add this in, or just purely work in the automotive paint or enamels and spray paints. But it allows me to do things that I want to do that I wasn't being able to accomplish with oil and acrylic. Like I love the fast dry quality of acrylic. I want that instant gratification. I want it done. I want to move on. Like I'm a quick thinker and I just want to paint and I don't want to wait. And acrylic, would let me do that, but wasn't getting the vibrancy I wanted in color, or I wasn't getting the reworkable quality that I like in oil. I was getting more vibrant color in I feel oil, and I was getting, you know, that reworkable quality, being able to go back in and blend and do things I wanted to do. And this offers that to me. These paints are incredibly fast drying. They're incredibly intense in pigment and color, but they can be reactivated by themselves. They can be reactivated, you know, by acetones, by solvents, by, you know, turpentines you find at the store. You can really reactivate these, and then I can blend a bit, and I can work with it enough. Like, I don't really need to be doing too much because I like it graphic, but it started to really lend itself to me, and I was really enjoying the way it was allowing me to work and the process of it, being able to just do something really crisp and sharp and walk away. But then, oh, I want to really blend this area, but I can go back in and do that. And I don't have to worry about the fact that it's been there for 2 days or it's dried already. It will still let me do that until it's sealed. So it just became a good marriage of, like, the way I like to paint, the finished product I'm looking for, and then, you know, being able to achieve that with this. And yes, it's definitely pretty toxic, and you do have to wear a respirator if you're spraying a lot of this or inhaling a lot of it. You know, I'll sneakily go outside in my garage and spray things, or in the driveway, and hope my neighbors don't yell at me. But yeah, so it's definitely something you have to be careful with and protect yourself with. But I really think it can offer some really great things. And for me, it's also, I think we were talking about this, is the longevity of it.
Yeah.
It's important to me for what I put my time into and my work to have a longevity to it and a quality to it. If I'm putting my work out there and I'm showing it and I'm selling it, it's important to me that if someone has chosen to fall in love with one of my paintings or invest in me, that I'm giving them a quality piece of craftsmanship that's going to last, that's not going to fade, that's going to stay that way, and is going to be a good investment. And especially my work on my paintings, and I love working on hard board because I think that it holds it well and it keeps its shape for me. I feel like maybe I don't take good care of canvas, but when I work on canvas, I feel like for me there's a little too much texture, or it absorbs a little too much, or I just, you know, it leans up against this too long and it gets this weird little stretchy spot, or, you know, you really have to. But with this, I like that hard, crisp surface that I can really paint into and go on, and gives me a nice, smooth finish.
Yeah.
But yeah, so it's working with these products has been like a marriage of just, it works so well for what I like to accomplish and do, but also it gives me that crispness, that bright quality, that longevity, that durability that I really want to offer in my work. I don't want someone to invest in one of my pieces and then in like 3 years' time it's falling apart or coming off the paper, or, you know, falling apart on them. I mean, they chose to buy a piece of my work, and I want the craftsmanship to be there.
Yeah, I absolutely love that point, and it's such a reasonable avenue for you to take from the work that you do, that it would eventually, you know, everyone's work, if you spend 40 hours a week doing anything, it's going to impact, you know, your creative process. But I think that focus on preserving something, and making sure that and making sure that you're honoring the value of what you create, and it could serve so many artists to really consider that question, and say, how is it that I can make my piece last as long as possible, and how is it that I can make sure that it's not going to, you know, wilt after 15 years of exposed sun, and some artwork is supposed to age, you know, it's supposed to change and grow, but I mean, sometimes I look at things and I'm like, how are you going to get dust off of that? Like, it's just, like there's just endless questions. And I think it's a really valuable conversation to have about, you know, this is exactly how I want this to look forever. And I know exactly how to accomplish that goal.
Yes,
and I think
I'm working. Yeah. I'm almost there, I think. I don't know. But this has definitely allowed me to get like closer to that, or to, because the vibrancy of the color, the sharpness is very important to me in the way that they look. And I'm finding that, these products, these mediums, and I think we were talking about how, like, you don't have to buy the most high-end stuff.
Yes,
you can,
yeah.
some of these products, you can get some pretty cool, like, Rust-Oleum stuff at Home Depot.
Floor sealer.
Yeah, floor sealer. You can get some really cool enamels, at the store, and they work really well. And I don't know, I highly recommend it.
Well, hopefully we can, like, inspire some people to go out to their local,
Hardware
Lowe's
store.
or somewhere.
Check out the hardware store section.
Uh-huh.
They got some good stuff.
Yeah. Spend $4 and have something last forever.
Yeah.
So, I mean, again, like, we're really talking about these ideas of longevity, of preservation. And I love how that just seamlessly loops back in to the focal point on wildlife and the environment and honoring the space that we have. Your interest in the natural world and in endangered species, has that been something that you've had throughout your whole lifetime? Is that more of a recent interest? Can you talk about that a little bit?
I think I'm an animal person. I think I've always been pretty in love with animals. Had a lot of pets growing up. My grandparents have a farm, had horses and things like that. And actually, I'm pretty positive if you ask my parents, I think when I was younger, I said I was going to be a zoologist because that's what I wanted to do. I wanted to work with different exotic species and things. And I was pretty obsessed with giraffes for a really long period there. It was like stuffed giraffes, giraffe socks, giraffe pants. It was bad. But definitely always been into wildlife, animals, different species. And it just, I don't know, like I said, it just seemed like with the way my art was going and the patterns I was just trying to get and the colors I was doing, I was just thinking that, wildlife really speaks to it the best. I mean, there's just incredible variety out there of the colors you see, from like tree frogs to birds to snakes to spiders and different things like that. It's just, I mean, it's immense and you could just go on forever. It's endless.
I want to just go back to some of the details of your pieces, and hopefully everybody who is joining us at home can see some of the artwork that's behind us a little bit. You already mentioned that you love this mirroring.
Yes.
And that you love this having like a dual split image. There are some faces that are in your work. Can you talk about the inspiration for that?
So when I want to have a figure in my work, when I want to represent a person, I'm usually using myself. I'm a very cheap model, so I can use myself. My husband has been kind enough to jump in and sit really still on the couch while I draw him in profile. But yeah, a lot of the times when I'm pulling in figurative elements, I want to express something about the relationship between our species. We're a species too, but I want to represent something about humans and animals and the relationship. And most of the time, if I'm gonna throw in a figurative element, it's me in some sense, taking a photo and then distorting it a bit or turning it more into an illustration or a tracing, and I'm definitely using myself a lot. As well as Google's a wonderful place. I will go in if I really do like to have reference imagery when I draw. So I will pull from stock imagery that I might find through image searches and kind of manipulate that, or just use, whatever I can get to see a profile and different things like that. Probably have the weirdest search history of anyone, because it'll just say like man with beard, with glasses, turned to the left, with nose and eyebrows. And then that's what I'm trying to find, and I will look for something like that. But I don't know. I also think that I've become more of a reference-driven person since working at my job. I feel like in the past, I mean, I definitely pull a lot from my imagination, as you can see, but I definitely was doing that maybe a lot more. And since being at my job and a lot of what I do being trying to create reality, trying to match something to look real, to look realistic, using reference imagery and really trying to paint what I see or things like that have become much bigger to me than I think they were in the past. So I do find myself really always wanting to paint from either images I'm taking, images I'm finding, pictures I'm looking for, but I like to use a lot of reference to at least do the subject matter in my paintings.
Yeah. This is kind of a random question, but do you use any form of like digital processing in your work? Like you mentioned with when you're taking photos, are those mainly just on your phone, or do you ever pop things in Illustrator or?
I don't these days.
Okay.
I would say when I was actually somewhat good at Adobe Photoshop and some things back in college, and when I used to use it a bit more often, sometimes when I took the images of myself, I would break those down where you can put them through like, a black and white filter or something to make them more of and I could see the shapes and the shading. I've definitely done that with, I think there's a face here that's been used a lot. It's probably the one. This double-sided face painting here.
Okay.
And I don't think I have another one up. No, I use this one image of, it's the image in this drawing, if I can pull it from behind you.
Absolutely, please. I love this piece.
Oh, thank you. This drawing is an older drawing of mine, but this is definitely my face. That was put through kind of a filter, and then I did a drawing of it, and then I've used this a bunch of times. I've used this imagery, this face, in a lot of silkscreen prints, drawings, a couple paintings. But yeah, that's something I used to do. I really don't do it that much anymore. I'll actually usually just take an image, print it out, either draw from it or use the tracing paper and maybe just take the shapes and the lines I want and kind of make it more into an illustration and then go from there. Because I'm definitely not looking to paint the figure elements realistic. I'm really hoping to capture the animals more that way, and maybe even have, if there's a figurative element, that almost become more of the pattern or the design and stay very graphic than be portrayed in a realistic manner at all. Yeah.
Fantastic. I'm so glad that we just got to show that piece.
Oh, thank you.
I really like that one. So a lot of your work within this educational realm, there's that congruent line of like activism, of teaching people things, of making people remember movements that they have forgotten that they should be worried about. Do you have any favorite groups who are doing work in this arena that you would like to share, or?
Well, I think there's a couple groups that I like that I think we were talking about, and it's really just groups that I follow, and I read their articles and kind of see what they're up to and see what they have to say about things. But I love a group called Panthera, and it's a large cat conservation initiative, and they mostly focus on like all the large cat species. Really into that one. I think it's called the International Rhino Foundation, but again, it's like anything with rhinos these days, because I feel like they're the species that need our help the most, possibly. But I like that one. Obviously, the World Wildlife Federation. I follow their posts, and I'm all over Instagram following Pangea Seed and all different other things, and just kind of looking at what they have going on. And sometimes that's what does it. Sometimes it's just kind of popping on and reading an article, and I'm like, oh, interesting. And then I kind of go off on my own tangent and kind of research things and look things up. But But a lot of the time it's mostly just me hunting around, learning something, and then being kind of annoyed by it and being like, I'm going to do something about that, or I think I need to paint something about that. It'll make me feel better. So, yeah.
Well, I'm so excited. I don't know how well it can be seen, but this orangutan back here, you mentioned that you're going to do 2 more panels for that, right?
I would like to. I would like to do, the thought was when I painted it to do 2 more panels of the exact same size, also on wood. That panel is actually wood. And I wanted to do like 3 animals that I think are prominent and have prominent issues facing them. I'm thinking more like along an elephant species and probably a large cat species, probably tiger. And I want to do 3 panels that go together in some way and connect in some way. But that was kind of the thought when painting that piece. So
I'm so excited to see the next
thank you.
hanging. Yeah, I think that's going to be spectacular. So, in talking about your future plans, what are you looking to do in the future? Do you have anything coming up?
I don't have a lot coming up. I feel like again, being a mom, I'll tell you, all the art moms out there, kudos to you. It's really hard to find the time between working and then being a mom, spending time with my son and my family, and then finding time to actually get in the studio and make my own work. It's difficult, and I'm working on it right now, getting that in place, but I don't have a lot coming up in the future. And I think I was talking to you about the fact that I kind of want to work on just a body of new work. Like, I feel like that orangutan was the start of that. I was fortunate enough to be asked to be in an exhibit at Ellerslie Museum about, I would say, a year and a half ago now, maybe longer. Okay. And I did have that painting in the show. I had just finished it. But I'd really like to work on like a new body of work, something that I feel really strongly about, something maybe on a slightly larger scale like this piece, and go from there. I kind of feel like that is what I want my focus to be. I feel like I've kind of one-offed things here and there. Like, I finish a painting and then I just kind of throw it in and I show it, and I finish a painting, I throw it, but I really want to work on an actual like new body of work that I'm proud of, that I'm passionate about, and then figure out what the venue is for it, if I want to show it, where I want it to be. But yeah, I think I'm kind of ready to not be so worried about having this here and that there all the time, but maybe focus on building something that I feel is strong, and then go from there.
Fantastic. Where can we watch the development of that happen? Where can we hear more about you?
Many art friends of mine would be mad at me that I don't have a website, but I choose to use social media prominently. So I really use my Instagram account. You can find me at Uhaze Artwork on Instagram. You can find me on Facebook at Megan Uhaze Artwork. I have a page devoted to my artwork. I try to post when I'm showing, what I'm doing, any new work I have in process or have finished on there. So those are different places where you can check in, message, chat, keep up with what I'm up to.
Awesome. Okay. Maybe we can see if Julio can pop either of those links or handles into the chat if anybody would be interested who's joining us at home in finding out where they can find more Megan all the time. That's okay. That's fantastic. Well, so to be honest with you, I mean, I think that's like all of the conversation that I had planned for. Julio, I can see that Julio right now is doing a fantastic job of finding all of those social media links and pasting them down there for you guys. So please make sure that you go check out more of Megan's work. And do we have any questions, Julio?
Yes, Gulu Brewer has a question.
Oh, Gulu, okay.
I'm curious, does she try to portray any emotion in the animal's face?
I think, to be honest, maybe the only piece that I've tried to relay any emotion is probably the orangutan. And actually, the actual image that I used is pinned on the wall next to the painting, and it was sad. I just feel like his face was really sad. It was just, he's just staring off into the distance, and that's probably one of the only paintings so far where I've tried to convey and maybe an emotion. And I feel like also the things I put into the painting are trying to convey an emotion. The fact that I wanted to have like a youth orangutan in the bottom, kind of jumping and free and happy and like maybe not knowing what his future holds. And then the people at the bottom, kind of the expression. It was important to me the expression of their arms be kind of like a why expression, or a what's going on, or a, like a grand gesture. Yeah. But I would say that that painting's probably the first one that I have actually tried to have any emotion portrayed in the animal's face. The rest, it's funny, I'll kind of just really enjoy a certain position, like whether the animal to me looks amazing in profile because of the patterning of the fur or the skin or the color of the feathers. And I'll kind of choose maybe the position they're in and the image I paint from that. And in some way I see them as portraits. And I almost feel like sometimes when people sit for portraits, there's emotion, but sometimes they're just sitting for their portrait. And yeah, but I think that might be somewhere I head in the future. I think with this series of panels I want to do, I think that's something that will probably, the stance of the animal, the position, things like that are going to be important.
Good question here from Chi Bravo. Would you like to travel to visit some of these places you feature in your work? Which would be your first trip and why?
Oh my God, of course I would. I would love to go everywhere. I love to travel. I think I would have to go somewhere tropical probably first. I think the thing I'm drawn to the most is birds. I paint a lot of mammals, and I have painted insects and bugs and some moth and a spider and turtles, but I really love birds. I feel like I would love to go and like see all the birds of paradise and things like that. And there's something about feathers. I love painting feathers. Even if I don't portray feathers as feathers, there's something about all the strands and the different colors and the layers. And yeah, it would definitely be something like that. I'm not sure I could pinpoint a place, but somewhere where they've got some pretty cool birds.
Okay. Is that it? Can I ask you a question?
Yeah.
I've been doing that all night. I'm not tired of it yet. Do you have a favorite bird species, or I don't want to say animal species because I feel like that might be too overarching unless it's still giraffes. But do you have a favorite bird or animal?
I'm really loving the cassowary. I've had that one for a very long time. And one of the more recent birds I did was the California condor. And even though he's maybe not the prettiest guy out there, there was something so cool about like the tones of his skin, because their head is completely just skin, it's bald. And I really loved that. And I don't know, if someone walked up to me on the street and asked me what my favorite animal was, believe it or not, it would probably be like sloths. And I've painted a sloth, but I don't have it. Someone purchased that. But and actually, I like turtles. I think I paint a lot of turtles as well. Something about their shells and their builds, just the way their like feet are strange and their heads are strange. I love it.
Circular.
Yeah, I don't know. There's something about it, and the patterns you see in the shells are phenomenal. The colors are amazing. So
fantastic.
Yeah.
Well, that was a great answer for somebody who wasn't prepared to be.
I just like animals.
You're so focused on animals. Yeah, I wouldn't have known what to say. All right, well, if that's all of the questions that we have, I think that it's time to wrap it up.
Awesome.
Again, so I think that Julio, through her, Megan's handles and information in the chat, you guys should definitely go check out some more of her work. I want to give a huge thank you to Grounds for Sculpture and Julio Vidal, who has helped me put all this together, as well as Bill Nobes, who is from House of Robot, who's from House of Robot. He has done an exceptional job of helping us stream this today, and we are so grateful to him, as well as the Seward Johnson Atelier. The next Artist in Action program is going to be with the sculptor Autumn Wright. We're going to be having a fascinating conversation with Autumn, and that's going to be on August 20th at 6 p.m. So keep an eye out for that, as well as the remaining roster of artists who we are going to be working with until 2022. So thank you, everybody, so much for joining us, and catch us on August 20th.